If you're a conservative Texan who's concerned about how Republicans are going to do in the 2020 general election, and you're concerned about good conservative public policy, I wanted to give you some quick news on Senate Bill 2 and some language that is in the House version. We just put up a story on LukeMacias.com talking about the fact that over 40% of Ted Cruz's margin of victory over Beto O'Rourke comes from counties that are negatively affected by language in the House version of Senate Bill 2. What does that mean? So currently, one of the things we're doing when it comes to property tax reform is that we are lowering the rate that triggers a rollback election. So right now, if your county or city or school, or really it's just your county or city and some of your other local entities, if they go above 8% when it comes to the increase in how much property taxes they're collecting from their property owners, a rollback election is triggered. And so we are lowering that down to 3.5%, which in essence kind of puts a lid on local property taxes so they're not rising as fast as they have been for the last several years. However, one of the provisions put in the House version significantly harms small cities and small counties. It's called the de minimis rate. So just to explain to you what the Senate did, unfortunately, there were a couple rural senators who fought to make sure that their constituents didn't have access to property tax reform. And so those people in the Texas Senate actually had a carve out of small cities that bring in 15 million or less, that they would not that the caps would not apply to them. The 3.5% triggers would not apply to them. So that's what was in the Senate version. But the House version that came out inserted language called the de minimis rate, which means that cities and counties can raise their taxes either 3.5%, which will then trigger, anything over will trigger an election, or 500,000. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that many small counties only have budgets of $1.2, $1.5, $2, $3 million. So what you have now is that where current law protects those taxpayers to an extent, meaning that if that county wants to raise their property tax revenues above 8% in growth, they need to get the permission from their voters. We now have something in place where those counties and cities can go to their constituents. They can raise their property taxes 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% in some cases and never ask voters for permission. In the Senate version, we basically said that these small municipalities and counties just stay at the current rate of 8%. And now in the House version, we're saying these cities and counties can raise their taxes even more than they currently can without voters' permission. 40% of Ted Cruz's victory came from these counties. I want you to think about that. Republican legislature is sending a message to these rural Republicans that we're so grateful for you helping keep Republicans in power in Texas, that we're passing reforms that make it easier for your local tax collectors to collect more of your taxes without your input. Here's the good news. This legislation is in conference. And if you are a conservative activist, you should be reaching out to your legislators and letting them know the harm that this policy would have. And if you're just a concerned Texan, maybe you're in a larger city, a suburb area that isn't covered by this, the truth is you should be concerned for our state for keeping Texas red. And by the way, I haven't even gotten into the fact that 900 cities easily also are very negatively affected. So if you live in a small city, even in a suburb in San Antonio, Dallas, Tarrant County, Denton County, Collin County, the Houston suburbs, you're very negatively affected by this one provision. Now, I will say that Senate Bill 2 has some great provisions in it, some phenomenal policy changes. And if this de minimis section gets removed or significantly pared down, Senate Bill 2 is going to be a phenomenal bill. So keep that in mind, read the story, share it with your friends. Thank you so much.
Over.